My name is Tuli and I have a story for you. In a little bit, you are going to hear about how there came to be an agreement between some inhabitants of the earth. An agreement is sometimes called a promise or a contract or even a covenant. All these words mean similar things, that two or more people or animals or others have come together and agreed on something. And not necessarily two or more people. Sometimes we have to have an agreement within ourselves, with ourselves. And it can be hard to come to an agreement. Think of a time when this might have been for you. Perhaps you wanted to play Legos, but your friend did not. Perhaps you wanted to pretend play to be on a ship and your brother or sister wanted to read a book. Or maybe you witnessed someone doing something and you wanted to convince them to not do it. How did it work out? Did you have to give up what you were doing? Did the other person have to? It can be hard, right? Sometimes, even after we have reached an agreement and decided how to work or play together, it might not be carried out and more disagreement might arise. And we might feel very hurt and upset. Can you think of a time when that happened to you? Someone agreed to do something and then couldn't do it. Or you were promised something and then the promise was broken. How did that feel? We are all going to make mistakes and break promises, even though we might have tried very hard not to. What makes this even more complicated is that there might be another person who is hurt by what we decide or agree to. We might not even see them or know that they are being affected. As Unitarian Universalists, it's important for us to try again and again to come to new agreements and to understand how we were hurt or might have hurt someone else. We might even carry our hurt with us for a long time. And we might have to be open to hearing that we have caused hurt, even though we didn't mean to. But we can try to work hard to repair the damage that might have been done, either to us or by us. In fact, this is an obligation, something we have to try to do. Sometimes this can be tiring and take a really long time, and we might have to give up something or have the other person give up something. We can make new agreements and begin anew. As you listen to what's coming up, think about what each of the creatures had to do to come to this new agreement. The Agreement by Barry Lopez. One time, before there were any people walking around this valley, there were bear people. There were also salmon people. The bear people had an agreement with the salmon people. The salmon would come upriver every fall, and the bear would acknowledge this and take what they needed. This is the way it was with everything. Everyone lived by certain agreements and courtesies. But the salmon people and the bear people had no agreement with the river. It had been overlooked. No one thought it was even necessary. Well, it was. One fall, the river pulled itself back into the shore trees and wouldn't let the salmon enter from the ocean. Whenever they would try, the river would pull back and leave the salmon stranded on the beach. There was a long argument, a lot of talk. Finally, the river let the salmon enter. But when the salmon got up into this country where the bears lived, the river began to run in two directions at once, north on one side, south on the other, roaring, heaving white water and rolling big boulders up on the banks. Then the river was suddenly still. The salmon were afraid to move. The bears were standing behind the trees looking out. The river said in the middle of all this silence that there had to be an agreement. No one could just do something, whatever they wanted. You just don't take someone for granted. So for several days they spoke about it. The salmon said who they were and where they came from, and the bears spoke about what they did, what powers they had been given, and the river spoke about its agreement with the rain and the wind and the crayfish. Everybody said what they needed and what they would give away. Then a very odd thing happened. The river said it loved the salmon. No one had ever said anything like this before. No one had taken this chance. It was an honesty that pleased everyone. It made for a very deep agreement among them. Well, they were able to reach an understanding about their obligations to each other, and so everyone went their way. This remains unchanged. Time has nothing to do with this. This is not a story. When you feel the river shuddering against your legs, you are feeling the presence of all these agreements.